Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. This is the Pierce County Affordable Housing Developer Pipeline and Coordination Meeting. And thank you to Amanda for facilitating this meeting and sharing her Zoom link. And Felicia and I and Amanda will be talking this afternoon and going over the agenda. So my name is Brian Schmid. I work for Pierce County Department of Human Services in the Affordable Housing Unit. And we last met here as our group back in November. We wanted to pull together another meeting here before our affordable housing NOFAs come out, our local affordable housing NOFAs, City of Tacoma and Pierce County. We have a pretty fairly full agenda today, so we wanted to do introductions and then kind of hop into the agenda. So I started, so I'll turn it over to Felicia to do an introduction, and then we'll kind of pass it around the room. So Felicia.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think for introductions, it might go a little quicker if we weren't sharing screen. That way we could just see all the squares. Y'all aren't squares. I wasn't talking about you specifically. I meant the boxes on the screen. So I'm Felicia Medlin. I am the Housing Division Manager with the City of Tacoma. And I'm essentially mirror Brian's job, except with the city. And so I manage the affordable housing resources that the city makes available for projects, and do a little bit of policy coordination with some other departments and organizations in the city. So I will call on Robin Korak, or Korak.
Yes, correct. Hi, Robin Korak. I'm the CEO for the Multi-Service Center, and we do a variety of things, including owning and operate over 650 units of affordable housing in South King and Pierce counties. And I will call on Rob Huff.
Thank you. My name is Rob Huff. I'm the Director of Communications at Metropolitan Development Council, and I will pass it along next to Mary.
Hi, I'm Mary Steele of Compass Housing Alliance. I'm the Executive Director there, and I will pass it to David Dewey, with whom we work.
Hey, David Dewey. I'm in an airport, so I'm going to be quick. I'm with Lutheran Community Services Northwest, and I'm going to pass it to Mark.
Hello, I'm Mark Cody, Executive Director of Parkview Services. We do housing for extremely low-income people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I'll pass it to Zach.
Hi there, Zach Baker. I'm with Southport Financial Services. We're a developer here in Tacoma, but have a portfolio from Hawaii, Florida. And I will pass it to Amanda.
Hi, everyone. Amanda DeShazo. I'm the Executive Director for the Tacoma-Pierce County Affordable Housing Consortium. And I'll pass it to Obi.
Everyone, I'm Obi Amobi. I'm with Mercy Housing Northwest, and I'm a housing. I'll pass it to John.
Hi, I'm John Torrance. I'm the Director of Housing Development for the Low Income Housing Institute, Lehigh, and I will pass it along to Patrick Tippy.
Hi, I'm Patrick Tippy with Horizon Housing Alliance, and we're a developer of affordable housing, nonprofit developer of affordable housing, and I will pass it to Tiffany Spear.
Good afternoon, everyone. Tiffany Spear. I'm with the City of Lakewood. I'm the long range strategic planning manager and also the ARPA program manager. And I'll pass it over to Jeff.
I knew Tiffany was going to send it to me. So I am the guy who tries to fly under the radar all the time. Jeff Gum, City of Lakewood. I am the Housing Division Manager. Do similar things to what Brian and Felicia do, managing the HUD funds, as well as all of the rental housing and dangerous building housing programs for the City of Lakewood. And with that, I pass it off to Zach.
I think Zach went already.
Oh, who do we have left?
About Roberta.
Oh, there he is. Roberta, sure.
Okay, Roberta Scher with Tacoma Housing Authority. I'll pass it to Maureen.
Maureen Fife with Habitat for Humanity, and I will pass it to Jason.
Jason Gauthier, Habitat for Humanity, and I'll pass it to Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Weaver, also from Habitat for Humanity, Grants Manager. Is there anyone who hasn't gone yet? Sharon.
Hi, I'm Sharon Lee, Executive Director, Lehigh Low Income Housing Institute. Hi, everybody. I'll pass it on to Peter.
Peter Catterall, Parkview Services, Project Manager. Is there anyone else who hasn't gone?
Hi, I'm Mary Bushnell, and I'm with Vadis, and I manage our housing program, and we do single-family housing for individuals with disabilities, very low income. And I'll pass it to Laura.
Mary. Hi, I'm Laura Charbonneau. I'm with Pierce County Human Services, and I'm a housing loan officer. And I will pass it to Dolly. Have you gone?
Nope.
Okay.
Thanks, Laura. I'm Dolly Small, Executive Director, Homeownership Center of Tacoma, also known as Homeownership Center Northwest, 30-year-old nonprofit sheltered market housing developer. And I'm going to pass it to Victoria.
Is there a Victoria? I don't see.
Victoria? Victoria Chow? Okay, sorry about that. Who hasn't had a chance to introduce themselves? Paul.
Oh.
Hey, I'm Paul Troutman. I'm with Community Frameworks, one of the housing developers here, doing projects across the state, but located in Spokane. Jim, did you go?
No, I haven't. I'm Jim Stretz with the Pierce County Housing Authority. We have public housing and vouchers.
Shannon, have you gone yet?
No, I have not. I'm Shannon Schuman. I'm a housing loan officer for Pierce County Community Services. Anybody else?
Anybody else? Going once.
Joseph Nagel, Director of Housing with Pioneer Human Services for Western Washington. Thank you.
Great. Anybody else that has not gone? We'll do a going once, going twice, sold. Okay, so again, thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon. As I mentioned earlier, we last met in November, right after our Affordable Housing Awards came out. So we thought what we would do today is provide a little bit of an update on the 2021 awards, some things that have happened since our last meeting, and then go into our 2022 Affordable Housing NOFA, look at the timeline on that, the amount of money that both the city and the county are putting out in those NOFAs, and then go into some question and answers on that. After that, we can talk about 9% low-income housing tax credit, some of the local priorities. At last we left it, we were working on an application process for 9% projects. Fortunately, unfortunately, we didn't get to finalize that last year. Fortunately, that process kind of worked itself out this last time around, so we didn't have any issues, but we do want to start the process of developing that and getting something more formalized. And then after that, we want to talk about the Department of Commerce, the Housing Trust Fund, and advocacy efforts around the trust fund. So Amanda, Felicia, and myself will be talking about that. And then lastly, maybe go around the room and do some project updates. We want to do some work on the affordable housing pipeline. It does need some work. So we want to update that and get a really good solid handle on what we have as far as projects out there. that will help with our planning, the city's planning, and help answer a lot of questions that we get from electeds on exactly what's going on and what developments are happening around the county. So I'll go ahead and start off on 2021 kind of wrap up. The county released its affordable housing awards back in October. We created a wait list of projects that were not able to be funded with the hope that some of the American Rescue Plan Act dollars could backfill that wait list. Fortunately, during the 2022-23 Pierce County budget process, the County Council awarded around $7.5 million to help with 6 of the projects that were on the wait list. So we were able to fully fund 6 projects that were on the wait list with American Rescue Plan Act dollars. Those award letters went out to those developers at the end of the year in December. So we were able to make quite a few projects whole with local dollars, some of which are seeking trust fund, and one in particular seeking 9% credits was able to be made whole by the county. So we were pretty happy about that. Thank you to the advocacy efforts that were done in that area from some of you on this call. So we were able to get those dollars dedicated to affordable housing. So that's in a nutshell kind of a wrap on the 2021 funding process. We have those award letters out. Projects are going to start progressing this year and next, and we look forward to working with you on those contracts and getting some of these projects up and going and off the ground. So Felicia, do you have anything to add on the city's 2021 funding round and any follow-ups?
I do, and I think with regard to our waiting list, we've already reached out to the 2 organizations that were on our wait list for projects. And so we've been working with them to find out or to determine if our home ARP funding that we set aside or made available during that NOFA is eligible. One project is, one project is not, so we will be adding some home ARPA funding back into our NOFA this time around. And did we go over are we going over the funding amounts that we're going to make available too? Okay.
Yeah, we'll go over that next.
Okay, so I'll save that one. So I think we've really been in contact with most of you all who have active awards with us in terms of whether we are working on an environmental review or just kind of staying in communication and making sure we have the latest and greatest with regards to your projects. Looking at my list here. And I think it's safe to say at this point, we're just really waiting on the bottleneck with commerce and tax credits to just kind of work its way through. We have a lot of money and a lot of projects right now. And so we're really just waiting on them to be able to move forward once they secure whether it's commerce or tax credits. And so we're just, Jason's on it. So it looks like you'll have to give us the highlights, Jason. So yeah, I don't have much more to add than that. I think if you were awarded funds this past time around and you haven't heard from us, definitely reach out to myself or anyone else on my team.
In the same for the county too. If you haven't heard from us, please let me know. I will, as Felicia was talking, I did have a thought. When I mentioned American Rescue Plan dollars that were used to fund the projects on the wait list, those are Treasury ARPA dollars. Those are not the home ARPA dollars. The home ARPA dollars are a separate pot of money. So those are not the home funds, the home ARPA funds, those are the Treasury dollars. So just wanted to clarify that. Before we move on to 2022, did anybody have any questions or comments on 2021 Affordable Housing Awards process? questions? Okay. 2022. I'll start off with the county and then I'll pass it to Felicia. We've been talking with the city of Tacoma, and we are going to be releasing our affordable housing NOFA sometime probably in April. So in the next month and a half or so, we're going to be releasing our affordable housing NOFA at the county along with the city. We're going to have a considerable amount of resources allocated to this NOFA. The county council appropriated 12.5 or thereabouts dollars in ARPA for this NOFA for the county. So that, along with our home funds, our 1406 affordable housing sales tax dollars and our 2060 document recording fee fund, we haven't landed on an exact number yet, but it's going to be somewhere between 17 and 18 million dollars that the county is going to release through its NOFA process in April. Those funds primarily will be capital dollars for development and preservation, and there'll be a small pot of money set aside for operating and maintenance that we typically do with our document recording fee fund. So working again closely with the city of Tacoma on the timeline for the NOFA. The takeaway we have is this is a blessing for the most part and a little bit of a curse. This is the most money the county has ever released in a NOFA by about threefold or fourfold. That's the good news. The bad news is it does create a little bit of a bottleneck when we have a lot of projects that are seeking limited 9% credits, limited housing trust fund dollars, and some other sources. So it's again a blessing and a curse that we may have a little bit of a bottleneck, which brings home the point of local coordination, working on this pipeline, working together in creating a process where we can get projects moving forward as best we can. So again, looking forward to getting this NOFA out and getting as many projects in the door as we can. I don't think we're going to have a per unit cap necessarily, but those are all questions that we haven't yet flushed out yet. We have never done a per unit. Well, we have a statutory cap with home. We've never had a per project cap because we have such small amounts of dollars typically. So we may be looking at a per project cap this NOFA, but we haven't, like I said, we haven't flushed that out yet. So with that, I'll turn it over to Felicia for city comments, and then maybe we can open it up for some Q&A and some feedback.
Okay. So on the city side, we have a amalgam of funding sources that are going into this year's NOFA. The regular players and CDBG and home, but then we also have our affordable housing fund, introducing our new revenue source of the 1590 is going to be in there as well. So we're looking at about just over 6.6 million. And I just want to, there's a caveat there. So we're in our actual NOFA, just asking that anyone who's interested in applying to really look closely. We're changing things up a little bit. And I think because we have so many different funding sources, we're gonna provide a little bit better description of what each funding source can actually be used for, because there are minor differences. And so while we have a $6.6 million pot of money, a particular project may only be eligible for 3 million of that entire pot. And so we just want to be really clear about how the different funding sources can be used. And that way, any potential applicant can also take that into consideration in terms of how flexible their project may or may not be in terms of being able to make minor adjustments to maybe their target population to be able to be eligible for more of that pot overall. So looking forward to another year of coordination with the county on this NOFA. Welcome any feedback. So last year, the city and county NOFA was released at the same time. I think they closed together. The subsequent review processes, those will always differ because our just the system that we have to work through is different. So the awards will be staggered. I'm going to toot my own horn or toot the city's horn. I think ours come out first. The county also has to go through multiple review bodies, whereas ours just the one group, the TCRA makes those recommendations. So, but let us know any feedback you might have on, you know, that coordinated application window. My opinion, I think it went well last year, and which is why we're trying to time it and do that again. But definitely, developers, you're the most impacted by this, so give us some feedback on that. And that's all I got.
And just before we get Jason, I see your hand up, we'll get to your question. Wanted to comment on Felicia. That brought to mind, we do have there was a proviso in the county budget. So the county, for the first time, will have to take its affordable housing recommendations to council. They don't necessarily approve the allocations of those dollars, but we will need to go through a little bit more rigorous process this year to do the awards. Council will have to review the recommendations before they move on to, in the case of home, the Pierce County Community Development Corporation Board. And in the case of the document recording fee fund, that would be the 2060 steering committee. So a little bit more work on our end. So the city may beat us to the punch again this year for awards, which is okay. So just thought I'd throw that little tidbit out there, and then we'll get to questions. So Jason, you had your hand up, and fire away.
So I'll start. I have one question for Felicia and one for Brian. So Felicia, you mentioned CDBG will be in the NOFA. I'm wondering how much are you gonna, do you have any sense yet how much of your allocation you're gonna break out for the NOFA?
Yes, so I actually, it's not a lot of CDBG that we're going to have in the NOFA. It's just about 150,000. So it's actually a small amount that we just had some left over from this past allocation.
Okay, got it. And that'll spell out, I would imagine, you mentioned how you're going to define, like, better define for folks what the money can be used for. And so just I know it can be used for this, but to clarify, that will be spelled out that money can be used for offset infrastructure supports for affordable housing developments in the NOFA. Okay.
Yep.
Cool. And then Brian, just a quick question. This is sort of a couple of years down the road, maybe, but I know council allocated $24-ish million for the community first village model, but that was sort of stipulated in that budget allocation that those dollars, there are some sort of timeline markers that, because that money has to be spent someday, and if that doesn't come to fruition, so can you sort of, I mean, I know it's a couple of years out, but like, what is the first marker where those dollars begin to potentially get dislodged into the general affordable housing stream?
So that's a great question. So the ARPA dollars have a little bit of a tighter expenditure deadline than do some of the other funding sources that we have. I believe those ARPA dollars, the Treasury ARPA dollars, have to be spent by December 2026.
Correct.
Now, yeah, so if and Tiffany, thank you for that. You probably know more than me. If we get down the road where we're 2 or 3 years away from that deadline and projects haven't proceeded well, then some decisions might need to be made. So those ARPA awards will probably have pretty hard and fast timelines attached to them. As far as projects moving forward, expenditures and things of that nature. So that's a little tighter tight line than, let's say, our document recording fee or 1406, which don't really have statutory timeliness requirements. And our home dollars, we have some, you know, the expenditure requirements on those have been loosened up by HUD a little bit. So we have a little longer timeline than than those ARPA dollars would.
Okay.
So.
And then I just noticed a note. I do have one more question about the county NOFA in relates to ARPA. So you said there's going to be about $12 million from the ARPA allocation in the county NOFA this year. Fully, and so those dollars can be utilized for a lot of stuff. Lakewood and Tacoma have both given us allocations to do offsite improvements with ARPA dollars. Is there going to be more flexibility then built into the NOFA to allow those sort of uses for affordable housing development?
That's a good question. Probably need to vet that out a little more, and I would want to talk to Tiffany and Felicia a little bit about that as well, and exactly what usage. My initial thought is if we can use it and be more flexible with those dollars, we should, especially if get those dollars spent towards good uses quicker than it normally would. So there's some, it's pretty loosely defined regulations with ARPA. It's not like home where you have a massive set of regulations that you have to follow. It's just kind of here's something that's eligible, and then follow these general guidelines. So yeah.
Got it. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was under consideration.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mark, I think you had your hand up, and then maybe Amanda next.
Regarding having to go to county council for approval, is that going to be done before the awards are announced, or will it happen?
Oh, absolutely. Have to be done before the awards are announced. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Amanda?
Yeah, thanks. Following up on Mark's question, is this the reason you have to go to council because of ARPA funding, or what's the reason behind it? And then do you foresee this being something that's going to happen from now on?
Well, literally the reason is because the council passed a proviso in the budget that required us to do it. What the thinking was behind it, I could only speculate. So I'll speculate. I think it is because of the ARPA dollars and the increased amount of dollars that are going into affordable housing in 2022 and 23. I'll say that, but I wasn't part of any of those conversations that happened at the council level.
Okay, so, well, sorry, to add to that, do you think this is going to be happening from here on out?
Well, it will happen in 22 and 23. It was passed as a budget proviso, which means it only runs with the 2022 and 23 budget. So for the next 2 years, that is what we are required to do through that proviso. What a future council will do when the next budget biennium comes around is anybody's guess. It may get dropped, it may get put into code, or something else in between, or there's another budget proviso. Just I'm not sure, but I do know, what I do know is the next 2 years we have to do it.
Okay. Do you foresee any issue with that? I guess my inner advocate is coming out. Like, do I need to do any work with council to make sure that these projects go forward?
Well, that's always a concern, that we get projects politicized and not evaluated based on the criteria in the NOFA and based on sound underwriting and review practices. So that is definitely something that we'll have to keep an eye on, Amanda, and if we do need some assistance with that, we can work with you on that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, thanks, Brian. I appreciate it.
Jason, I thought I saw your hand go up again, but I might have.
I just didn't take it down.
Oh, okay. Any other questions on funding? Can I get kind of a virtual hand raise on who's going to be applying in 2022? Great. We got some hands going up. Good. Great. Okay. Felicia, did you have anything else to add?
I did not. I think I saw all the hands go up. I guess my next question, which we'll probably talk about when we talk about the pipeline, is how many of those hands are going to need tax credit and commerce funding?
9% credits, yes. Oh, we see more hands going up. So we have some coordination work ahead of us, Felicia and Amanda. Okay, so next topic is the 9% low-income housing tax credit local prioritization policy and application process. And we've had conversations last year. We had a group that, a subgroup that worked on that. Amanda at Tacoma-Pierce County Affordable Housing Consortium kind of led that effort. Unfortunately, last year we never really came and landed on an application process, scoring, and some policies around that local prioritization. Again, like I said, it worked out last year. I think we had one project that applied and was funded with 9% credits, or received the 9% credits. So it worked out, but we want to pick that work up again in 2022. So with that, Amanda, do you have some things you want to add to that?
I'll just say that we're pretty close to having a complete policy. It sounds like there were some changes that were made, I think, with Wishbeck, and then maybe the trust fund, that we want to make sure that we kind of make this process as easy as possible for all of the developers. So we're going to cross-check that stuff, and then hopefully we'll have a draft for you guys to review, and then we can use that to move forward. I don't think we need to have our next project in our decision on which project, priority project, until September. Is that right, Brian? Yeah, so we have a little bit of time to kind of finish the process, but I'll say that we're pretty close.
So I would imagine that we would want to bring something to this group probably at our next meeting, maybe in July or so.
Yeah, I think that's definitely doable.
Okay, great. Felicia, do you have anything to add to this topic? Okay. John, I see your hand up. Do you have a question? John Torrance?
Nope, sorry, I accidentally left it up. My apologies, didn't realize it was still up.
Great. Okay, any questions from the group? Sharon, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I have a question. I think the trust fund made awards, and as you know, construction costs have gone up. Concrete is a problem. Supply chain is a problem. And I think we've told the trust fund that many projects that did get awards will need an amendment because of overall across the board cost increase. So we need the city and county to be advocates with us, with the state, to have them sort of help with projects like just about, I mean, I can't imagine why 100% of the trust fund projects aren't over budget with what has gone on most recently. And so the same question is, last year we were able to get the trust fund to backfill some projects that had gaps without having to reapply. They just did amendments. I feel like the county and city funded projects will also be in the same situation. So we would like to have a discussion with the city and the county and the state to make some amendments. So these projects that have already been funded, that were presumably fully funded, but now have gaps, will be able to move ahead. So I'm asking, I guess, Felicia and, Brian, how do we move ahead with this problem of, the immediate crisis around cost increase? Is this making sense?
No, that makes sense. I think that's a conversation that I'll have to have with our leadership at our department. Do we want to set aside a certain pots of money to backfill existing projects that may have cost increases? That's a conversation I'll need to have. With some of our federal funds, there's an allocation of dollars we get from HUD, and that's all there is. With our document recording fee and with our affordable housing sales tax, there may be some fund balance there. The ARPA appropriations are all subject to council approval. So there's definitely some leadership conversations that have to happen on my end anyway. Felicia, I don't know what your thoughts might be on that.
Yeah, I guess my initial thought is that if you are a project that is in that situation where you've gotten funding and your costs have went up, I would say that you should submit an application in the NOFA. We don't have at the city, we don't kind of have this pot of money tucked away that we would be able to respond beyond what we make available in the NOFA. So if you have a project that's going to fall in that kind of scenario, then you should definitely get an application in for that project. Because once we award our 6.6 million, I guess that's the only portion that I can speak for now. We have lots of hypotheticals. We are entering our budget. The city is going to be doing their next biennium budget, so for 23 and 24. And it's with that budget that we're also programming our ARPA funds to kind of get at one of the questions I responded to in the chat. So those ARPA dollars will likely be coming available in early 23 once our budget becomes effective. And so, yeah, I can't really speak to them being available to backfill any gaps. So I guess my best advice at this point would be to submit an application that if your cost for any given project has increased.
Hey, this is Zach Baker. This is obviously something that's affecting a lot of folks right now, including us. Things like concrete and last year, especially lumber, are volatile markets. And I just want to mention, maybe this is a for-profit commercial, but I think there's a lot of nonprofits doing it too. Sometimes you just got to write a check, and it's not the ideal situation, but Lehigh is a sizable organization, and some of the smaller nonprofits go and get sponsors. There's a reason you submit your applications with things like the financial solvency forms, and you show proof of financial capacity to develop these projects. So I understand, believe me, we understand cost overruns and budgets looking a lot different now than they did at the time of application. That said, I think everybody on this line can agree we already have an incredibly finite amount of resources, and there is scarcity. And everybody here is trying to stretch the buck. And so, yeah, I guess I would just encourage you and other folks to try and get creative and look at what your organizations can do before we start just going and asking for more money. I think there's the concept that we should stand behind the commitments we're making to the funders as much as they stand behind the commitments they're making to us as the developer. So.
Yeah, I would say that the trust fund has already been very collaborative. So the last year, the trust fund added funds to projects. You know, obviously there were lots of projects that were also affected by the pandemic. And so, you know, I think we don't want projects to get stalled because there's a gap having to do with the, you know, the overall crisis of everyone's facing significant cost escalators. If your project was funded last year and you couldn't move ahead and now you have to wait, then, you know, you've got an escalation costs. I mean, you just have like sunk costs and then you have all the other problems. So we would rather have an opportunity to make a pitch with our partners, the trust fund, the county, and the city, to just make that project happen, because it would be tragic to miss a tax credit round or a bond round because you're short, you know, a small percentage. And so I believe that we should try and, you know, accommodate projects that are like, you know, 80, 90, 95% funded and get them, you know, to the finish line so that we can then free up the pipeline for other projects.
So just two thoughts, Sharon. One is I agree with Felicia. If any of you on the call have projects with local funding commitments that you feel are going to have a local funding gap, I would strongly encourage you to apply through this NOFA that's coming out. We're going to have as much money as we've ever had at the county, and it's potentially possible we can add dollars to existing projects through that application project if you kind of have a good sense of what the gap's going to be. Thought number two is there's going to be gaps. You know, we send out our awards, people, you know, and now we're in, you know, October, November, and now there's another gap because costs have gone up again in the last 6 months. I think that's a different question at that point about resources at the local level and at the state level. Once you do have a project that's fully funded and ready to move forward, and then all of a sudden there's a cost escalator, and now you have all your funding awards lined up, and now you just have a gap, and you have to go to all the funders to see if there's some additional resources. I think that's a different scenario that from the county perspective, we can have a conversation at our leadership level. I can think of one project off the top of my head where that happened, and that developer was able to go to the trust fund and get some additional dollars, and they were able to make it work. The county was not able to add additional dollars to that at the time, but the trust fund was able to backfill the gap, and it was able to, the project was able to move forward. But I understand your point. So again, my response is, if you think there's going to be a gap now based on your award and based on cost, then I would apply through this NOFA. So then we don't have to have that conversation potentially down the road and have challenges trying to come up with resources to add money to projects. That's my two thoughts anyway.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So anything else on the 9% credit question? Policies? Okay. So it looks like Jason kind of beat us to the punch on this one. There's a drop on the Commerce Housing Trust Fund capital budget that Jason dropped in the chat there. The issue that we had that I think probably most of you on this call are aware of was the coordination between the Washington State Housing Finance Commission and the trust fund in regards to our local priority for our 9% project, we're not in alignment. There was 2 counties, I think one of those counties is on this call, Spokane County, where our priority 9% project was awarded credits and then was shut out at the trust fund for reasons that Felicia and I and Amanda are still not quite 100% sure of. So we're aware of this issue. We're trying to work with Commerce on it. We have a phone call set up with Nate, and I think maybe even some Spokane folks to have a conversation with Nate, who's the director of the Housing Trust Fund there, to try to figure out what we can do at our level to avoid this problem in the future. We don't want to prioritize our projects, get 9% awards, and then have the trust fund shut the door on those projects and have issues moving those projects forward. So Amanda and Felicia, anything to add to that comment?
No, I'm still a little bit, it still strikes a nerve, but yeah, I mean, we just, this can't happen again. And so Brian and Amanda and myself are really working hard to get some level of coordination and just process in place. One of the things that they said around the coordination is that the coordination doesn't guarantee that the priority project that we put forward is going to get funded. And I don't think we were going in with the expectation that it would be funded. I think that we were, however, expecting our local priority and the rationale and reasoning behind that priority to carry more weight. I like to think we were very thoughtful and we did a lot of work in coordination at the local level to put that priority forward. And it felt like we did that for nothing. And so I guess I'm just in the place of whatever we have to do at the local level to not have that happen again. And I think we put forward a competitive project too, which really goes back to their explanation for why they didn't fund it. It's just really, to this day, I haven't heard a good enough explanation. And I've heard a couple. And so the fact that they're changing also, again, strikes a nerve. But at this point, I'm moving past that and I'm just looking for a way to not have that happen again. And so we're going to do whatever we can kind of on our side to make that happen. That's where I'm going to leave it.
Paul, do you want to add anything, since Spokane was the other county that this happened to?
So yeah, thanks, Brian. So Felicia, I think you were very kind to the Housing Trust Fund. I would prefer to not be that kind to them and put the burden squarely on whatever decision process happened that I don't understand and is unfathomable. We had a similar situation here in Spokane, and I'm in a unique position to see both sides of what's a three-sided coin, I think, here. And the confusion lies, I think, entirely with the Housing Trust Fund and not with the city or the communication or the way things should work in an efficient system that does not unduly delay projects, risk funding, or push costs up beyond what they already are. So I'm in the city of Spokane. Recently, I wrapped up a 25-year career at the city of Spokane. I was part of the Spokane County process to create the Metro County Pool coordination system to select the one project for Spokane County that would be awarded 9% tax credits. Our first year worked great. Immediately following that, I changed jobs. I now changed over to Community Frameworks, and I now develop the affordable housing. So it's great, guys. If you're on a funder side, it's pretty cool to actually help it come out of the ground. course, one of the frustrations is one of my first projects is an affordable housing development project here in Spokane. It's Airway Heights, just outside of the city of Spokane in the county. We were selected by the county, which is a three-part meeting between the city of Spokane, Spokane County, and the Spokane Housing Authority to sit down, look at the applications for 9% credits for the year, and designate to the Finance Commission what the one selected project would be. So this would sound very familiar to you guys because I'm sure it's the same process. The project I was sponsoring and developing was selected as that one project. So, I mean, really, at that point, I counted myself to be a slam dunk. I was holding my breath to make sure that the Finance Commission would deliver on their promise to respect the local priority choice of the project, and then also that the trust fund would honor their commitment to coordinate with the Finance Commission, not only in their release of their NOFAs and the release of the funding awards, but also in their respecting their commitments to the local funder opinions and priorities. And we in the past have had, of course, the quarterly funder meetings, have talked with Commerce, and they had always listened to what the locals wanted to have funded in each of their annual funding rounds. And that always didn't happen at Commerce. I mean, I'll totally acknowledge that. Even to this day, I have never quite understood what motivates Commerce to choose the projects that they fund. And even having said that, this was a total shocker. Not only, I mean, I would have expected if it was only the Spokane County project, we would have been the outlier, but here we've got two situations of two projects in two counties out of 5 metro counties that the local choice, which is not a confusing thing. I mean, locally, we got together, picked one project, just one project, and said, this is what we want. And everybody fell into line and respected the local priorities from the local experts, except for the trust fund. And I don't get it. And we also had a debriefing, and the answers we got back were related to, gosh, we're sorry we don't have enough money for everyone, or great project, loved it, but just couldn't do it this year, or there's no promise of funding, which I agree. But if you say no, then there should be a really good reason, because there's super good reasons why everyone else said yes. And the trust fund just did not rise to that level. So to me, the problem lies with the trust fund, and I'm hoping this is just a short learning curve that doesn't get repeated again in this next tax credit round. So I'm gonna get off my soapbox right there.
Thanks, Paul. That helped add perspective that we weren't the only county that had this issue come up. I see 2 hands up. Sharon, I think yours was up first, and then Patrick.
Yes, I wanted to say, was it Jason that you sent out the information about the trust fund allocation for the capital budget? I just wanted to say that if it's really true that there's additional 114 million for the trust fund, we need to figure out what portion of that is competitive. But that is an incredible result for 1 year to have a supplemental budget that includes that amount, in addition to the Apple Health through Homes, 100 million, and then the rapid acquisition pot, 300 million. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that I think Pierce County and Tacoma folks, we should advocate for a higher per project, higher per sponsor limit, because of, that would actually help ease and stretch the city and county funds. So if there's a way of people who are, active in the policy advisory team, the PAT, and people who are, maybe, of course, the consortium, I think we should really push for I think the per unit and per sponsor limit has been overly restrictive.
Amanda and or Jason, do you have, I know the consortium has that on their advocacy agenda. Can you comment on that?
I'll say that we did send a letter with your request, Sharon. We did, I don't think I mentioned the units, but you and I can connect on that. So a letter did go to Commerce and then our 27th legislative district. So I'm not sure if that language got included in the proviso, but I will also say that it was just for this 2022-23 budget. I don't know if Jason, if he's had a chance to look at the language, but we could definitely check and get back to you too.
Patrick?
Yeah, I think one thing that I think would be beneficial for Pierce County here is as the parties who do have the conversation with Commerce have that call. I think updating the legislative contingent for the area is important. I think I think some of the members of the Spokane group have also been keeping their legislators up to date of, the legislators work hard to appropriate dollars to go statewide, and Pierce County is one of the most populous populous counties in the state. Some of the most representatives who vote to support the appropriations for this much needed housing, and just want to make sure that the consortium and members are keeping your elected officials up to date and not just letting a black box of Commerce decision making kind of be the end all. I think it's good to let them know if you've appropriated record levels of funds and we're not getting answers and units aren't getting built here. So I think that's one good thing. And then I second kind of Sharon's point about increased sponsor caps, both per county and per sponsor project. I think that can also help with some of these records and backlogs. And that's it for me.
Is it okay if I just comment on that really quick?
Sure.
So yeah, Patrick, I hear you. And I will say that, as part of the players in the state funding of housing and what we advocate for, like we've been trying to be reasonable, I guess is one way to put it. A lot of the talk that happens between the consortium and the alliance and a lot of our members is like, you have to trust the process and go through Commerce to get your projects funded. And we see a lot of the times that there are direct allocations at the state level when the budget comes out, that partners had gone to the legislators, and it always seems like a slap on the wrist for whatever consortia like has a project from their county doing that. But this is like a prime example of why this happens and why we skirt the process of going to the Housing Trust Fund and requesting money because stuff like this. And so that's one of the points that I'll heavily be leaning on when I talk with Commerce, because you're right. It's absolutely correct that we can go to our legislators and ask for an appropriation and, get our projects funded that way. And hopefully like Commerce will listen, but yeah, I hear you. And I guess I'll say too, like one of the offers was made, to work with the project that didn't get funded. And it was a decision to not go back and request the backfill of that before the budget. Paul, I don't know if Spokane, if you guys, went and asked for direct allocation, but that will speak volumes, right? When we have this conversation with Commerce.
So we did. That was our solution, was to go back to the legislature and request those funds. Since I just saw that notice come out, I just checked that and we are in the budget. So I am now fully funded. One of the responses that Commerce had given was that they were responding to the legislature's criteria in their initial funding to Commerce, that they focus with a priority on permanent supportive housing and homeless projects. And I think that they were inconsistent in their awards for that as a reason for not funding our project in Spokane. And I think that there's a reason that the legislature just voted with their dollars, and they just provided $3 million to my project to be fully funded because it was housing that's ready to go and important to this community. So I think I agree that Commerce does tend to punish projects, at least with the tongue lashing, if they go to a legislative appropriation. I would also be frustrated if I didn't have funding to put through my process because my hands were tied because it was appropriated to a specific project. But conversely, it may be that Commerce is misreading the legislative intent in its origin, and perhaps they're being focused in the wrong places.
Zach, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on a couple of these things. Paul, I'm glad to hear that you're fully funded. It is tough to call. I mean, I think having to go around trust fund is probably just something you have to do if their decision making is, so much of a black box, I guess, as Patrick called it. And I guess to kind of further that, what Patrick said, if Commerce really is this big black box, and we truthfully don't compete at Commerce very often, but do we really want to double down on the projects that they're choosing by raising the per project or per applicant cap? So like, I think it's $4 million or maybe it's 5 million right now or something. And yet we're sitting here with two of the biggest counties in the state saying that they didn't get funded because Commerce couldn't figure out how to read the legislative priorities. And then we're going to go give Commerce the ability to allocate a larger volume of dollars to a specific deal based on the black box funding structure. So I guess I would encourage people, before you just say that more money is better money, to really look at what Commerce is doing and try and figure out, is their funding strategy or their coordination with other public funders being done correctly before we vote to give Commerce the ability to raise the cap on a project by project basis. So yeah, I guess I just wanted to get that out there and get people thinking about that. Raising project caps sounds like a good idea, especially as people's budgets continue to move upward with increased material and labor costs. But I think we might want to sort out the Commerce funding structure, priority structure first.
Thanks, Zach. Any other comments on this? Roberta?
So I guess a question for you and Felicia, maybe. I've heard that Commerce is moving in the direction of only funding one project per county as things move forward. Is that a true rumor that either one of you have heard? And if that is in fact the case, then I think it speaks to even more advocacy that needs to be done. And we were working with the Shiloh project, which is the Pierce County project that did not get funded, and there are homeless units in that project. So I take Paul's comments and I multiply by 100 in terms of the frustration that we have experienced in trying to, get that project funded.
I haven't heard that for the trust fund, no. Felicia, have you heard that?
I have not heard that directly. In reading between lines, I think it wouldn't be hard for folks to draw that conclusion just based on some of the conversations and the way that they've been talking. I guess the one thing that I was unsure about, if that were to be the case, is one project per county. I don't think that gets, I think that flies in the face of the pool system that they have. And I think that would, if they were to be moving towards something like that, it would be my hope, although I don't know how much hope is worth with Commerce these days, that they would be, reaching out to Brian and myself and Amanda and the other consortiums and the other myself and Brian equivalents across these other public funders to have those conversations before they made a sweeping policy decision like that. I'm trying to remember if at the last policy policy meeting that came up at the last PAB meeting, but I'm not recalling
No.
right now.
No, it didn't come up. I think it came up at the stakeholder 9% meeting. Like, how do we get Commerce to be on the same page as the Housing Finance Commission when it comes to like allocation? I think that's where this all stemmed from.
Patrick, you had your hand up again?
Yeah, just commenting back to Zach, I think you're right. It's probably blindly advocating for increased caps probably isn't wise, but to in a year when counties have more dollars than they've ever had before, Pierce County's situation isn't the same. Every other metro county also has more money than they've ever had. We've got record trust funds at the state level, as Sharon mentioned, and we also have a 9% program that has a 12.5% decrease. So they're going to be doing less projects. There's likely going to be, unless Brian awards one project 9%, 9% project dollars, and the rest go to home ownership, there's probably a second pipeline of a project type that's some combination of county and state dollars. And that's where I think a per project cap boost could be valuable to help get units built more quickly, rather than pushing out, only affordable homeless and 30% AMI type projects are only 9% financed. I think this year is a prime year to do a not typical 9% local source subsidized project.
No, that makes sense. And to be completely honest with you, I'm not even opposed to raising the project cap. I guess I'm philosophically opposed to raising it when everybody here is complaining about the way that the dollars are currently being allocated. I don't want to give them the ability to further misallocate the funds, I guess is my point. So sure, project cap needs to go up. I think you got to hit the allocation criteria twice as hard as you hit the project cap discussion, though.
No, that's a really good point. Raising the cap and we still get shut out of the trust fund doesn't accomplish
exactly.
Hopefully,
and if I heard Paul correctly, I don't know what his project looks like entirely, but it sounds like he only asked for $3 million, so the cap was irrelevant to his deal anyway.
Right.
Wouldn't have done anything. So,
correct. Great. Any other conversation on the trust fund, Commerce, or any other advocacy efforts that anybody wants to raise? I've taken some notes on these conversations. This is really good stuff, and I know Amanda, myself, Felicia, and maybe some folks from Spokane are going to be talking to the trust fund. I know that Spokane's got their allocation now, but we do want to make sure that we convey this information to Commerce, so at least we can be on record with our stand. So any other questions, comments on that? So we have about 15 minutes left. Sharon.
Sorry about one more comment, which is, we're really grateful that the Pierce County put in place the 0.1% sales tax, as well as the city. I think 9% tax credits are very scarce, and I don't think we should totally rely on 9% tax credits for housing production. Otherwise, it's just like you'll never solve your housing problem, right? So I think we need to look at the pipeline and look at the bonding against the 0.1% sales tax. If there's interest in doing any type of workforce housing, right, like using the 4% bond program, basically Tacoma could only fund like, take all your 6 million and fund a portion of a, 4% workforce project. I'm just saying that there's not enough money to be doing homeless housing to the extent you need to do it, as well as low, housing for low wage workers or extremely low income housing. So I think bonding against the revenue source makes sense. In addition to, especially if we're able to leverage more of the rapid acquisition money and the trust fund money, we just need more capital. Otherwise, you're just artificially constrained by the 9% program, which isn't going to get you or us where we need to be.
So just a couple of quick responses to that, Sharon. One, the county still hasn't, we have the 1406 affordable housing sales tax revenue. That's the county retaining a portion of the state's sales tax. The county has not implemented 1590, which is the 1/10 of 1% sales tax that the city did. So we don't have that revenue. Our 1406 revenue is around $1.5 million per year, and that has a sunset on it. So our bonding capacity with those dollars is diminishing, and the ARPA dollars at this point, with the amount of ARPA dollars we're going to have in the next 2 years, I don't see us bonding 1406. It just doesn't make sense at this time. Now, if we pass 1590 down the road, if the county council decides to do that, then maybe that's something we can look at. Your point earlier about the pipeline and 9%, 4%, and other different types of affordable housing projects is a very good point. We want to, and we'll get to the pipeline here in a minute, but we do want to track projects by 9%, 4% general affordable housing and homeownership, knowing that the resources needed for each one of those project types is different. We can't put all our money, you're right, we can't put all our money in 9% projects because we can only do one per year. That would forego any other types of projects. So we have to look at how we allocate our resources to these various project types and make sure that we don't fund 9% projects and then sit on them for the next 10 years waiting for them to get developed. I think that's a really good point. But to speak to the bonding, from the county perspective, unless the council passes the 1590 1/10 of 1% sales tax for affordable housing, I don't see that as something that the county would look at least in the next 2 years. And the further along we go with 1406, the less bonding capacity we have. I think at this point, we could probably only generate around $10 million by bonding 1406. And we have more than that in ARPA funds out there. So Felicia, did you want to comment on the bonding on the city side?
I did. And so we do have the 1590. Bonding is still on the table. That's something that's going to be going before our council in the next couple of months. So I imagine by the time we have our next, the next pipeline meeting, I'll have more information on that. Depending on the timing of when we would be looking to roll out some sort of bond, if it's authorized by council, it would likely be late this year or early next year. And so it's out of sync with our NOFA, but it's one of those scenarios where we will likely have to do some sort of additional request for information whenever we're actually putting forward a potential bond request, so that we know the bond request that we're asking for is supported by projects who could use it. So we're kind of in this in-between spot, because at that point we will have our NOFA recommendations working through the city and the county. And so it would likely be a process that would take place after the city and county NOFAs were complete, which might mean there might be a different set of projects that have a need for funding based on where the city and county awards might land. So we're looking at that timing, bonding is on the table, and we are working on kind of getting that presentation package for council. I can provide, I know Amanda O'Brien has kind of the list of who all's on these pipeline meetings. So I can get that information, and whenever we are kind of moving towards council, I can send out a note in case anyone wants to tune in or badger any of the council members to support this, that sort of thing. I can send out information on that. Oh, this is recording. Don't use that against me. No.
Zach, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Brian, that totally makes sense on the county funds. And Felicia, I'm glad to hear that bonding's still on the table in the city. I think the city seems like bonding would be the right answer. And I guess I would just encourage the city, and we've talked to city council members and are trying to voice this, but I think we would strongly encourage the city to really look at this as an opportunity to not just create or solve a problem now, I guess, and create a one-time pool of funds, but really try to look at this as an opportunity to create a city-specific trust fund. I mean, we can sit here and complain about what Commerce is and isn't doing, but City of Tacoma, and if Pierce County ends up passing 1590, or I don't remember the exact number, but I think Pierce County and Tacoma can come together and make a legitimate trust fund that works to help prioritize our projects at the state level. And I think I would encourage both the city and the county to try to emphasize the importance of making that operate as a trust fund and not like the housing grant fund that Commerce currently runs. Because the reason they're always short is because nobody ever repays. And I'm not saying that repayment needs to be 2, 5, or even 10 years down the road. But at some point, there are capital events that happen to all of these projects. And I think it should be in the documents that some of that money needs to go back to building a sustainable housing trust fund that'll continue to grow with the needs of our city or our county.
Thanks, Zach. I will just tack on one thing in terms of using bond proceeds to start some form of an ongoing trust fund. I know there would be strong opposition to that because that would mean money is sitting there that we're paying debt service on. And I believe that particular notion would probably be a non-starter in terms of the argument or supporting efforts towards bonding. And so there are lots of layers to why that's the case. But I definitely, and I'm in agreement with the fact that we don't want to bond against a lot of money that would just then sit because we're going to be paying debt service on it. So, but yeah, I definitely, oh, go ahead, Zach.
Well, just to clarify, I'm not saying it should sit. I don't think it should sit at all. I think we should bond against it and put it all out there and build some housing. I'm just saying that housing, whether a capital event happens in 10 or 15 years or whatever it is, 20 years, I'm saying that when the projects that are built from the benefit of the bonded money have some sort of a capital event, there's absolutely no reason those projects shouldn't be able to return some or all of the money back to the city. So by no means do I think money should be sitting around. We have a massive need. I think we should go build some housing, but I think people should look 10, 15, 20 years out and say, that money shouldn't just disappear into the ether. It should somehow come back. And unfortunately, that rarely, if ever, happens at Department of Commerce. But we're creating something new and something more specific to Tacoma and or Pierce County. And I think we can creatively shape a way that works.
Good clarification, Zach. Thank you for that.
Yep, you bet.
That's good. Jason?
Just to add on to what Zach just said, I guess, if if you do bond any of these sources, 1406 or 1590, either the county or the city, I guess, just to maybe help Zach there a little bit, I guess this group or the Affordable Housing Consortium, but some group of developers, I think, will want input into the development of whatever those notes will look like for those capital projects. So since it's being recorded, I'll put that on the recording for you. So we, the royal we, want input as you develop those notes.
Great. Well, it's good feedback. We have about 5 minutes left in this meeting. And a lot of people some people have dropped. What I'm going to suggest, instead of doing a round the room project update, which may take us quite a bit of time, and I don't want to do that, what I'm going to suggest is I will email out the development pipeline that we have now to the group. My ask is that you take a look at your projects on there, or if you have a project that you're working on that's not on there, that you add it. If you have a project that you are working on, can you update your information and send that back to me maybe by the end of next week? Friday, whatever next Friday is, the 18th. Is that a fair ask of the group? Oh, got one thumbs up, 2, 3, 4.
And do you think you can send out an email just reminding everyone?
Yeah, I'm going to send an email out. I will attach the pipeline, and I will ask that everybody complete that their piece of the pipeline and send it back to me. I'll aggregate everything after next week, and then maybe the following week I can get that out to the group, and we can go from there. So we'll do that. Anybody have any last comments for the good of the order? Felicia, Amanda, any parting thoughts? Mark, you have a parting thought?
Well, I just want to make a comment on Zach's commentary about repaying the commerce loans to have a sustainable trust fund. Our project, that would be a non-starter for the way we do the projects, because we're serving 30% AMI and below. And we don't get any revenue from the development because we're signing a note for everything. So the fact that in 50 years, the note's going to be forgivable is incentive enough for the organization to, develop the housing. But when we start having to figure out how we're going to repay those loans, when our projects are struggle to cash flow, especially if we don't have subsidy, it would be an issue. So I just wanted to, put that out there.
No. Go ahead, Zach.
I appreciate that, and I hear you. And I think especially with 30% AMI and below, yeah, that's a very tricky thing. In a lot of cases, I think your expenses probably trend more quickly than the rents would, if assuming you're collecting full rents. I guess I'm trying to build a system that works for 30s, but also works for 50s and 60s. There's needs across the spectrum. Very, very, very low income is a huge need, and maybe those projects look different than low income or very low income. But if you're particularly in Pierce County, if you're talking about 40, 50, or 60% rents, those projects have the ability to repay some amount of the note, if not all of the note, especially if you're talking 15 or 20 years from now. I think it just, I guess I like what Jason said. This is not the intent of today's call, but I think the developers would obviously like input as the city or the county develops the notes behind the bonding program. Yeah.
And Mark, that I think some of the you make a good point. The projects, the single family, the smaller projects that are serving 30%, those are unlikely to have some sort of capital event that Zach described in even 20 years. When we're talking larger 9%, 4% low-income housing tax projects where we have investors exiting after 15 years or so, there's often refinance opportunities where the project is recapitalized in some way, and potentially some of that debt could be repaid to the local funders. But your point's well taken. Understand that especially the smaller projects that really that serve a targeted population, such as yours, just don't have that debt capacity. I totally understand. Somebody brought up a really good point, and that is where can you view this recording? I will talk with Felicia and Amanda, and we will figure out a place and let the group know where, if you want to go back and look at this recording, you can do so. So with that, we are at 2:30. Thank you, everybody that joined us today. Great feedback. Really appreciate it. Really good thoughts. Really good takeaways for myself. Anyway, and we will definitely take this to heart. I will be sending out the pipeline to the group. Again, I'll put some instructions on there, but we ask that you respond by next Friday. We'll get this pipeline updated. We'll also figure out maybe where we could have a shared drive to store this pipeline. Again, I'll work with Felicia and Amanda, maybe even Jeff, on where we can kind of keep this developer pipeline in some sort of shared drive, and we can have folks go in and update it as needed instead of just us holding it. So anyway, more to come on that. And again, thanks for everything, and thanks for joining us, and everybody have a great afternoon.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks for hosting this. I think it's productive. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.